to EFL Finals. I'll be the chair for today's debate. My name is Tae-hee Ryu. Congratulations on making it this far, and good luck for this round. My panels today from the left can introduce themselves. Thank you, Lee.
Good luck. Hello, my name is Yu. My name is Sue. Good luck.
My name is Ishia. Good luck.
Good luck, everyone.
On opening government, we have HDS 3. On opening opposition, we have SNUDA 2. On closing government, we have HDS 2. And on closing opposition, we have HYDS 5. Today, we'll be debating under the motion, this House would criminalize hate speech. If everyone is ready, whenever the Prime Minister is ready, let's welcome them to the podium.
Yes. Yes. Dear panel, I'm here as the Prime Minister on the opening government team. I would like to start off by saying that this debate is not about limiting people in any way, shape, or form. It's about creating more freedom in society, a better society in the long term. It's about how societies can best handle hate through persuasive criminalization. Freedom of speech is not about the freedom to harm, hate to harm other people, because hate speech destroys equal participation in society. And we as a state or as a society in whole have a moral and ethical duty to protect our citizens from that very harm that they may be subject to. This is a conflict between free expression versus protection of dignity and safety. In our world, everyone can speak safely and exist safely without having to live in fear, and not only the loudest or most privileged. It is supposed to be for everyone, as a good society is meant to be. I will start off by defining, first of all, hate speech is, according to us, defined by any public expression that incites hatred, discrimination, or hostility towards a group based on identity. That could be very different factors going from race, religion, gender, sexuality, or any other forms of identity. When I say criminalize, I will define that by make it punishable by law. It could be anything from fines to imprisonment, but also community service, depending on the severity of the hate speech itself. As for the scope of this is supposed to only regard systemic, targeted speech, not just personal insults on a personal level. It's supposed to be about speech that targets groups of people in general. The mechanism that we would be having in our world is to pass legislation by clearly defining it, so it is not to be confused with the democratic freedom of speech that I am sure that our opposing team will argue for. It is supposed to be clearly defined so that there is no confusion between what is regarded as a hate speech that hurts others in the long term and as a society, instead of only the personal basis. It will also be a focus on education and deterrence and not just punishment. We're not here to punish our citizens, we are here to create a better life. So the aim of this is to protect public order and equality and not to suppress any type of criticism or freedom of speech. To start off with, my first argument is that freedom ends where harm begins. Any speech that directly dehumanizes minorities, for example, is not free. It robs others of equal voice. When people fear violence, discrimination, or any type of humiliation, they quiet down and they censor themselves and they try to fit in. They try to not be seen or heard in society. True free speech is equal capacity to participate and equal capacity to co-live in peace together. This criminalization would have the purpose of restoring balance. It stops hate from silencing others. We're not silencing any civilian, we are silencing the harm to civilians. Secondly, hate speech causes real social harm. It creates hostile environment. It emboldens hate crimes and discrimination. A very good example of that is the Nazi. We have a very clear history of how a freedom of speech that went overboard and went ahead to cause harm to a group of people eventually also caused the death of 6 million people simply because of their identity. That is the true cause of the unlimited freedom of speech that the opposing team might be arguing for. Our words shape our norms, and the norms become social permission for violence. This psychological and physical harm, it causes psychological and physical harm to marginalized groups, which in turn also causes depression, fear, and alienation in our society. And to say the least, it would also cause a homogenous society, where we only have one type of people that are accepted, as are for all the rest, they are aliens, they are outcasts in our society. So this protects the public safety and also is better for the trust in our institutions. We want our civilians to trust us. We do not want civilians that go up against the state in the end because they cannot feel any trust. They cannot feel that we are the ones that should be their safe space at the end of the day. Thirdly, criminalization deters and educates. It is not something that robs people of their freedom. The meaning of this is that legal boundaries set moral standards from when society goes overboard. When we punish hate, it also teaches respect. It teaches that we are all equal. So actually, the argument about that, this is something that goes up against democracy and may create any type of dictatorship or censorship in our society is false, because this upholds democracy in its truest, most genuine form. Most people will conform to law over time, and it will create a better society. I will also be focusing a bit on what the opposing team may be arguing for, that they say that freedom isn't absolute. But I would like to say that we already have, they think that this is a form of censorship of freedom, but I would like to say that freedom isn't absolute. We have already criminalized fraud, which can be a form of speech, a form of free speech. We have also criminalized any type of psychological and physical harm, which this fits into. Also, the argument about how this can be used for state abuse by politicians, we can have safeguards in place. As with any other legislation, frankly, freedom of speech would be the way for any corrupt society, corrupt politicians. It would be their very tool to use. They would use it to create those scapegoats in society. They would use one marginalized group of people and say that these are the problem in our society. So, in order for us to save that and save our state from becoming a corrupt state, we can stop it from creating monsters. As an example for that is Hitler, as I mentioned earlier. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your speech. Prime Minister spoke for 7 minutes, 21 seconds. Welcome Leader of Opposition to the podium.
My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. As the Prime Minister of the opening opposition, I would like to rebut the motion that the opening government has endorsed. And before, I would like to go through the terms. First of all, I would like to redefine the society where freedom is achieved. It's a society that ensures a person's freedom of choice and their freedom to change. And as they mentioned, it is true that freedom can be plural. And this is the point why the following argument of the opening opposition is better than theirs. And I would like to define what it is to criminalize. they said that the opening government said that criminalization happens towards minority. However, it doesn't necessarily happen towards minority. For example, it could happen to a conglomerate or it could happen to the rich. So I would like to redefine criminalize as regarding someone as a criminal and punishing those criminalized person based on the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is implied in criminalized verb because if it is, if like the hate speech is happening in a personal level, it could just be condemned by the community. It's not criminalizing. And also hate speech is speech that implies hatred. And it could include many bad innuendos towards someone. And as they also said, it's not absolute, it is subjective. It can be interpreted in various perspectives. And I would like to say that this hate speech, this term hate speech can be assessed and its scope can be defined by a certain person very arbitrarily. I would like to go on through the stakeholders in this argument. The stakeholders can be the government, the public, and the criminal. And based on this frame, I would like to go on through 3 arguments and say an alternative and prove why our world is better. Okay, first, criminalizing hate speech and punishing these hate speech and putting symptoms or assessing them by a system can create a very bad society where monitoring is dominant. It could create a social panopticon where people are forced to act in a certain norm and conform in a certain norm that is established by the governmental body that is in the center pedestal of the panopticon. So government can make a specific social norm and force them by the judiciary system, and therefore it could actually oppress the freedom of speech and the freedom of choice that people make. Additionally, this kind of panopticon society can lead to social turmoil of people who don't agree with the government's social norms. So there could be riots, protests, instability, and there could be more hate speech in the end. So panopticon society can lead to a very harmful result. Second, as I said before, as I define hate speech, it is arbitrarily defined by someone and assessed, its scope is assessed by someone. So what would happen if a country arbitrarily legislates a certain criminal justice system and just defines the criminal justice system's hate speech by himself? So as I say, legislative body and their way of thinking includes prejudice. It includes prejudice, and that's because everyone has prejudice and everyone is in a plural society. So victimization or criminalizing and assessing by the judiciary system can be very non-objective, and in the extreme cases it could be abused and misused with certain intent. The opening government mentioned the Nazi case. Nazi was an authoritarian regime, and I believe that this example strengthens our opinion because Nazi had their own criminal justice system and they defined hate speech as someone who goes against their regime. So this could be very bad for the society and it oppresses freedom. So I believe that since justice system and criminal justice system can be very non-objective, I believe that people should assess the hate speech more gradually and more non-passively. Later, please. Second, and finally, I believe that when criminalizing hate speech, I previously said that government is included in the stakeholder. However, in order to criminalize hate speech, it needs too much resources. It needs immense amount of monetary and personal effort. Like, speech is happening in everyday life. So in order to catch everything in the internet or in daily conversations, the police personnel needs to be put, and programming of systems should require a lot of money. So I believe that these government budgets should spend in our alternative way, which is rehabilitation and education infrastructure. As I said, criminalization is, the opening government said that criminalization can prevent making a scapegoat. But I believe that criminalizing and marking someone as a criminal is creating another scapegoat, and it makes the criminal lack the ability or lack the motivation to get better. So criminalization is actually a tit-for-tat retribution and punishment-based mechanism that bans someone's freedom of choice to become better, because someone may not have had the intent to hate speech towards someone, and if the criminalized justice system just makes the hate speech a criminal thing, it would just deprive the freedom of the person who accidentally made a hate speech, which can be very plurally interpreted. So I believe that rather than punishment or the criminal justice system, hate speech should be made better by volunteering or rehabilitation. Just basically restricting hate speech, which is arbitrarily defined by someone, it can block someone's thinking and it blocks freedom in the end. So to wrap up, just criminalizing someone puts too much disadvantage towards the criminalized person, and it can push them to go astray, and it can make them go a normie because it's basically putting a mark on him as a criminal. So it lacks incentives to rehabilitate, and it makes the criminal lack motivation of making a choice that he could change and he could get better and have freedom. And furthermore, when we extend the stakeholders, the public can trust each other well because they believe that the government has built a very good infrastructure for rehabilitation. They can trust each other, and the government built a better policy. So I believe that in our world, freedom is more achieved. Thank you.
Leader of Opposition spoke for 7 minutes 7 seconds. Deputy Prime Minister, to the podium whenever you're ready.
I would like to start before moving to our arguments, I would like to rebut what the previous speaker have mentioned. So first of all, by subjective definition, he emphasized that it can be very subjective because it is very arbitrary. But first, okay, it can be argued that the whole justice system is very subjective. We clearly define it in a different way, and also we truly agree that there is a general moral rule that activates within a society, and it's pretty clear because we know what is bad and we know what is considered as hate speech. It's spreading hatred to others, and it is pretty clear so that we don't have to clearly define, and we all know that it is bad. Second, he also mentioned that people are going to be forced to act in a certain form. Rather than forcing them to say something positive, we are prohibiting people from spreading hate through the speech because it is just spreading the hatred, the harm disguised as a speech. He also mentioned that we can have other alternatives such as rehabilitation and also education, but those also need resource and time, right? He mentioned that if we ban hate speech and if we criminalize it, it's gonna take us a lot of resource and time, but also those alternatives also take time. But okay, let's compare these both because they both take time and resource. The only way to stop hate speech is to criminalize it, because as a child we learn that saying something harmful to others and spreading hate, like swearing, it's bad. We know that it is bad, but people don't stop because education does not work. And in this point, the opposition is also agreeing with the fact that hate speech is bad because they are saying that we can fix it through education, and they are agreeing that it's something that should be changed and something that should be banned, but they are arguing that we can do it through education, while we truly argue that criminalization is the only way. And I would also like to add what our Prime Minister have said. So she mentioned an example of fraud. Yes, it is a good example because fraud is considered as crime because it does harm to others, and the society should be protecting the citizens by prohibiting those criminal actions that harm the society and creates social disorder. And now I would like to move on to our arguments, which can be extended from what the Prime Minister have said. So we, you know what, in the fact that we are criminalizing hate speech, it's not about banning an individual's sacred opinion. It's about protecting the people. Here, the people, it includes the people who are giving hate speech and also the potential people who are likely to be giving hate speech, people who are accepting the hate speech, and the other people who actually see hate speech going back and forth to each other or to one side. And hate speech is, like I've mentioned, harm disguised as a speech. It is a social violence. And now I would like to talk about our next argument and also an extension that it restores equality. So criminalizing hate speech means that those who are targeted from hate speech also matters as much as others do. So the stakeholders here are not only those political elites and those government officials that get hatred from the citizens, it's also those minorities such as immigrants, people suffering from poverty, because they get hatred from the media and from the people. So the opposition would likely argue that we need to protect and respect an individual's freedom of speech, but it cannot be realized because it's not going to be realized. It's rather going to create inequality if it is only the one side with the power, the one side with the ability to speak, be able to use it, and which creates a social disorder and imbalance. Also, if we criminalize hate speech, we're not like trying to protect the feelings, those like tender feelings of people getting hate. We're not trying to sympathize them. We are trying to protect the people getting hatred. It is right, but also to protect the people. So hate speech creates a society where whatever you speak, if it goes against the majority, it becomes a target, and eventually it begins to neglect those minor opinions. So I would like to emphasize that it is not only the people with authority and the power and getting hatred, getting affected by hate speech, it's also the general people. And how this works, okay, so the media has been so powerful, and the information, although it hasn't been proved to be true, speeds so fast and so pervasive that even though it doesn't affect like the one to get hatred, it also affects others too. And also, I would like to bring an example of politics. And so, why is our society polarized politically? Because South Korea's society politics are polarized because how the media works. So the media has a tendency to spread extreme and dramatic and controversial news so quickly and pervasively that if the message in the media itself conveying is controversial, it is more likely to get attention and money, and that's what the media pays attention to, and that is what they pursue, right? So the audience also choose media and the message that aligns with their political views. For example, algorithm works that way, right? So, and why is this bad? Because a political side you support okay, let's say that you have one political side that you support. If you are leaked to hate speech, and it leads to, eventually leads you to a more dramatic and the side that you support, and it won't neutralize your opinions. And even the society is polarized because people are freely speaking hatred to each other, and they're gonna say that we're still capable of resolving. They're gonna be like justifying hate speech, saying that we are still doing good to society because we are resolving and we're trying to find a solution to make a better society, since hatred is not like considered as a crime. But hatred is not a necessary source for a desirable social disclosure. And how this works, so people spread hate speech because they believe that they have the right to break down others' dignity in the name of freedom. Because they are criminals, by criminalizing it, they would realize that hate speech is not the final resolution of a polarized society, and they will find other ways to develop society, such as participation, but without the hatred. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for your speech. Let's welcome Deputy Leader of Opposition to the podium.
I'm here to be the second speaker of the opening opposition, and I'll first start about the rebut, what the opening government said, and I'll next move on to the more detail of our argument. And first, the second speaker of OG said that everybody knows that the hatred speech is bad, so that's the less likely to be subjective. But we believe that since the hate speech, the characteristic of the hate speech is the prejudice, because they said that hate speech complies to the race, gender, and politics. These are the things that people have the prejudice and have the real preferences over others. So we believe that since the hate speech really has the preferences, they can be the subjective, and even though they are less subjective, the systemization of the subjective things can lead to the real abuse, because since they have the prejudices, the country can abuse that. For example, when there is a country that hates the foreigners coming to the society, they will just allow the hate speech that don't like foreigners, and they would just consider the foreigner speech as the hate speech. So this leads to the abuse, and since the possibility of the abuse reveals that the criminal system's result can be different depending on the people. So even though that victim doesn't do the hate speech, since that country has the prejudices, and the countries that have the prejudices is going to assess that people can be the victim, and that is a really bad thing happening in the society. So that is the first rebut. And second, they said that rehabilitation and the justice system both need money, but we believe that even though they both need money, we believe that this rehabilitation has upper hand, because first, the procedure of all of the thing is respecting people. So if the society is doing things, they have to first respect the people, and that is the real responsibility of the society, and that is the first reason. And second, it is also being equity, because if the criminal system is being on, people who have a lot of money can endure that results. So if they have a punishment, that would be some money and going to jail, and the people who have a lot of money can afford that money because their parents are really having a lot of money. So very rich people can endure the system. However, poor people cannot endure the system. So basically, rich people can have a big speech in the society because they will justify their speech just giving the money. So they will say that, okay, I'll just give him money and just do the hate speech. So the society would be just going on with the very big rich people. Just rich people will have a lot of power on the system. So that is our rebuttal, and I'll add more detail on our arguments. So that our first speaker said that it will lead to a lot of surveillance. So I would add more procedure about that. So in the justice system, when people will criminalize, they will have an evidence of that. So this means that they have to look on the individual person's talk, like Kakao talk, and it leads to a lot of protests, because since at the last day of the Korea, we have a lot of criticism of the Kakao Talk surveillance system. So to make that, to find the evidence, that society and that government will just interrupt in the individual's text and individual speech, and also it will apply to the person and person interaction. Because when a person just hate the other people, they will just record what they said and just send to the justice system, and it leads to the very detrimental impact on the freedom and also the respect of the person in the society, because people can just accuse them, just record them, accuse them, and it will be a very natural thing in the system. So it leads to a really bad impact. And also, as I said before, I will move on to why our world would be better. It's because the first speaker said that we have to just acknowledge the rehabilitation of the people, and this leads to a better impact because it doesn't have difference between the rich people and the poor people. Like when we punish them with the money, rich people have a superiority. However, when we do the rehabilitation, they will give the just doing the volunteer job, and also just prohibiting just doing on the comment, just writing on comment, and that thing doesn't regards some wealth, so that it is more efficient that there is no social equity on this form, and also people, since the rich people cannot just avoid that system because of their wealth, they can be more effective and an incentive to just doing the hate speech. Also we believe that the cost effectiveness of this system is better than our side, better than their side, is because the rehabilitation doesn't get any more actors than the justification system. So wrapping up this argument, we would like to say that our world is better because first, it doesn't have any difference between the wealthy, and second, if their world comes out, people will fear to speak out, and since the other publics just seeing that this result will get fairness, they won't lead to the improvement. So if there is a problem with the society, the problem will be severe because people will fear. And second, the surveillance of the society will get lost, and people interaction would just lose their respect. And third, the polarization of the wealth would be more severe. So we believe that our world would be better in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Deputy Leader of Opposition spoke for 7 minutes 3 seconds. Let's welcome Member of Government to the podium.
I'm gonna start my speech now. So basically, what the opposition side are mentioning is that so basically they're talking about like freedom and surveillance, and under the social society resources and the political trustworthiness. And I'm gonna start rebutting all of their arguments step by step. So first, so freedom. Since like our first, I mean the government side keeps saying we are not like preventing the speech of freedom. We're not gonna our world not gonna be in censorship. We're still gonna have like freedom of speech, and we're just gonna make like our side as a better world, which allows like people to make a better speech without like blindfolded hateness and insulting, which will provide people to have like better opportunity to give a speech. And the opposition side also mentioned that it will take like immense society resources, but we cannot really like agree on that, and that's why we need to like criminalize like the hate speech and make the legislation of it. Because by seeing it in long term, the you guys keep mentioning, to like criminalize it, we can rather like efficiently manage the society resources. And they're also like saying by and you guys are also saying like public can trust each other more, but I also cannot agree on that. I have no idea how can like you guys like how can you guys make public trust more on each other, like with allowing hate speech, like seriously? So like trust each other, it has to be like based on objective, like not insulting speech, which will like to make the better like space to make they convey their opinion, like and something like that. And yeah, moving on to like our own speech, we would like to mention like status quo once more. So like now like the hate speech like it's like freely like allowed, right? And it has a lot of like backlash and the influence of this on the society like as a whole. Why? Because like the hate speech itself like work as like not just conveying the objective fact and the opinion, but also it as the mocking and the insulting and demeaning and everything like that. But I would like to mention that like without doing the hate speech, it is like already like fully doable to like convey like our opinion, and that all of the like the all of the podium of the speech is like well formed, and I have no idea like why we have to like allow the hate speech like just like form more complex and everything like that. So for example, like to mention the example of the U.S. The country U.S. is already like polarized into like two parties like severely, conservative party and the progress party, I mean Jimbo. And to mention about the Charlie Kirk case, obviously, because of like his hate speech, like Charlie Kirk himself died, and also it brought like moreover it brought like more like bigger backlash in the society like as a whole, which made like the party like more polarized, and even like country itself more polarized. And also like all the SNS and the social media is like it's like fighting against each other since they're like also polarized. And we would like to mention that like since the hate speech the regulation itself is really like the small and not really like organized like right now, and its like effect against the society is like too huge and enormous, and it is like causing like chaos since it's not like perfectly legislated, which causes like law gap like consistently. So since we are saying that we're not like preventing the right of the freedom of speech, we would like to provide that like how we're gonna like how we're gonna make standard and how we're gonna decide what is the hate speech and what is not. So we are saying that the standard of the hate speech is not just saying the fact itself. It is combining like meaningless mocking and demeaning like demeaning their like backgrounds and their physical attributes, something like that, which is like not really related to what they really want to convey. And we'll also like to say that if the object of the hate speech is like socially stigmatized, it is like called as a hate speech. We want to like criminalize like this kind of speech, like not just like preventing the whole speech itself. So I'd like to also mention about the case of celebrity like killing themselves because like they got stigmatized. So nowadays like all from the SNS and all the society, all the like celebrities are like getting too much like insult and mocking about like how they look like and how their backgrounds like, and also it also derivates the fake news, which will like make them into really like depression and something like that, and it will like cause the stigmatization of themselves, which eventually lead them to like kill themselves. We are gonna prevent all of this kind of like side effects that would cause from the hate speech, and we also thought about the stakeholders that our side will get. So like even the hate speaker would get like they're gonna get more opportunity to like convey this objective speech, and they're gonna like do the fact check about like their speech, and they're also gonna take responsibility of their speech, and of course the victim of the hate speech, we will prevent like the extreme case of harm that they're gonna get, and we will prevent reproduce rumors and fake news, and we will prevent them to like suffer from it. So and moreover, we're gonna like prevent the victims to be a hate speaker again, and like, it is causing the vicious cycle. And to see in the perspective of general people in the society, so of course the general people will only get the like fake news because like their speech is like based on the fact and objective opinions, and they're gonna be like sensible about like sensible about like accepting the information. Of course, the society itself, it will make like healthier society because like exchange opinions will be like really open, and without they're gonna exchange opinions without being like feeling fear of the victim of the hate speech. And we are also like provided the perspective of like in person and the online hate speech, and we divide it into two. But we're gonna elaborate like next speaker's speech. So for all this reason, we're very proud about those.
Thank you for your speech. Member of government spoke for 7 minutes, 22 seconds. Member of opposition, whenever you're ready, we welcome you to the podium.
Just give me a little moment, please. And now it's pretty classic. So just a quick notification. This is just mere water in a bottle of whiskey. I just use it as tumbler. Please to understand. All right. Oh, before I start, government side, I'm always respecting and I know Mao's intention towards your side. Please remind. All right. So the closing member of opposition speech starts in 3, 2, 1. Dear Judge, the government side are keep talking about bunch of nonsense. I mean, all they did during the whole debate is nothing but just suggesting. So why is this hate speech so bad? Why is it so much bad intention? How many stakeholders are actually getting harmed in this social flow? Why is this hate work so badly to our society and the stakeholders and the majorities whatsoever? They stressed so how bad and how horrible this hate speech is, and from the opposition government, what did they actually suggest it as end result? What did they actually suggest it? What did they say? What are they saying by mentioning criminalization? They're not gonna punish them that are. They're gonna educate. They're gonna educate and make the better conditions and to try to make a consensus with these people to mitigate their hatred. That's all what it says. While mentioning how profound their hatred it is, and what that profound hatred can actually do to minorities, there's argument. I'll take it later at 6. I don't know. All this stuff, and I would like to make some rebuttals about that. First of all, where is it? First of all, they mentioned about. No, it's not this. Oh yeah. They mentioned about. States has moral and ethical duty to care their people safe and prosper, but notice, since we're living in a democratic society who each and every individual's freedom of speech respected, state has also have a duty to make each and every people of theirs count in the politics, in the social, and in the culture, and in the community. And I believe they've also agreed what they mentioned. They said freedom of speech do count. What do they actually need for freedom of speech? Freedom of speech in order to make people's voice equal, and everyone has a right to make their own voices. But what they actually don't like is that freedom of speech actually creating a harm because of hatred. Now that's the summary of debate and the rebuttals. Now, before we go, I would like to do some setups. Now all the opening bench and the member of government actually neglected is so they've all mentioned what is hate speech and what is criminalization. Yet nobody have ever mentioned. So what is hate, fellas? Where does hate actually came from? Hate came from disagreements or clash of will. Each and every conflict, each and every debate. Why do we debate? Because our wills are having a clash. Why our wills are actually clashing? Because our ideals, our interests, our interest, our idea, our opinion, our circumstances, each and every factors are different, very from people, and that is what makes this freedom of speech so matters, and by this disagreement and clash of our all factors, by me and you, That's the thing actually making a hate. And sometimes, as you know, this clash of opinion might shown as radically. As you see, look at the Myeongdong. People are marching in the street saying CCP out. Of course, this will harm the people in Myeongdong and Chinese living in Korea, because that people will be minority in our nation. But what about in China? In China, in 2020, what did they actually did? They said, "Hey Korea," I want to swear, "freak off Korea." They are freak of Korea. In China, our South Korean people was the minority and were infected by hate speech. Is it bad thing? Of course it. I mean, notice. Look our stance. Look what our stance is. I strongly believe, despite all the cost of polarization or ideal problem, it can never be traded off with the principle of freedom of speech, because that's the least insurance of making a collective consensus. If we're actually consensus, notice we make collective. I'll add mechanism later. Spoilers. We make collective consensus by stepping on hatred and clash of will, by engaging with the hate speech rather than just blocking and isolating their opinions, and try to cope with it. That is the progress, and that is that is the true meaning of making a political idea, while the government side is constantly just ignoring this hate speech, ignoring their people's voice because it's radical, and just isolate and cut it off them from the society. Look how dangerous it is. As they mentioned, if we actually open the hate speech like Nazi or whatsoever, some authoritarian will appear and make tyranny or dictation. That problem is symmetric, and I'll explain why. Now what they're actually doing is to cutting off the people of interest, because they're actually causing us noises and harm. But as I mentioned, but in different terms, what does that actually mean? They're actually, in our society, there are like tons and thousands of people with different ideas, and they are actually cutting off some portion of ideas away and making this leftist ideas and ideals, opinions to be in advantage. Now they're become gaining. What is a PY?
First of all, your argument is incorrect. Our criminalization starts with education at a young age, which also your opening opposition argued for, so you're contradicting them. And also it can be stretched to fines, community service, and imprisonment. Also, what you're saying now is that we're cutting away some ideas. We're cutting away the hateful ideas.
Okay, I get what you're talking about. Okay, so, jeez, where was I? Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't. Back to a point. Sorry for not answering POI. I couldn't. Jeez. Anyway, this hate speech. Yes, they've also mentioned about this hate speech might lead to a hate crime of the minorities or target of this hate speeches. But notice that we still have a CJS system in our society, whether we're criminalizing a hate speech or not. If this hate speech actually spread into a hate criminal, that is something matter of CJS, and we can punish them. So this deterrence of hate crimes are symmetric, and we're having an advantage too. Now, what we're actually doing by not blocking a hate speech, why not be blocking? As I mentioned, freedom of speech is to make every people's voice count. But as you know, every people's voice cannot count all the times and cannot be gathered all the time. Every time we have a contradiction, just like this debate. And we're still, despite whether or not we step on this contradiction and do some debate like this, make some clash of will and make a decision and consensus, which can never be perfect. Yet it has the next step of it by stepping on this hatred and making, despite all this hatred and clash of will, we're actually making a least bit of consensus, which will eventually make a progress of making a harmony and conversation between people, which will create another decision, which will make contradiction. And if we get over and over, what the opposition side is actually getting is collective ideas, and while they don't have, but just calling them. That was all my speech. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Member of opposition spoke for 7 minutes 23 seconds. Government whip. Let's welcome government whip to the podium.
starting on my speech. 3, 2, 1. Hello, honorable judges and all the debaters on the government web and the government site. Firstly, I want to talk about main clashes in this debate, and then why we have to win, and then especially why OG didn't make sense than our arguments. First, main clashes. There are 3 main clashes. First, criminalizing, meaning of criminalizing of hate speech. OG said it is forcing minorities who have the bad intentions to make disgust to other people. But they didn't mention about hate speecher can be normal people who will be victims later. They didn't explain about this possibility than our arguments. And no thanks. And opposition said based on criminal justice system, we cannot get feasibility of criminalizing things because all the justice system should be applied to everyone. But they didn't understand about difference of powering weighing if they didn't do criminalizing of hate speech. For example, like as our member of government said, in SNS or in real lives, there are more weighing on hate speech if they give provocative or more strong words to attack other people. So I think they didn't understand about this difference of power weighing. And second clash will be feasibility of criminalizing. Opening government said yes, it is possible, but I couldn't hear any mechanism of legal system. They just continuously mention yes, it is possible and it is feasible, but I don't know why it is feasible. However, our member of government said and mentioned how it can make detailed standards such as with the definition of freedom and hate speech. And in the other side, opening opposition said there is non-objective standard if we criminalize the hate speech and it is really hard to do. Then alternative, they gave us volunteering or rehabilitation, but how? They didn't explain how they can change hate speechers or criminals' thoughts by volunteering or rehabilitation. They just continuously mentioned only the ideal alternatives in this. So I think we want this clash too. And third clash is about the results of criminalizing hate speech. First, opening government said to reduce violence, we can reduce violence or social violence by reducing hate speech. And opening opposition said if we criminalize the hate speech, there can be some mistrust each other and there will be, I don't know, difficulty on government's policy. I don't know why they mentioned this, but I think opening government and opening opposition side are all talking about one-sided and only narrow-sided their own view, because we mentioned all people can be influenced by justice system and also they can be victims and hate speechers too, but anyone of opening government and opening opposition mentioned about this, so I think we want this clash. And especially the comparison between OG and us. What OG didn't do. First, there was no mechanism in how to operate the justice system by criminalizing hate speech, and it is just ideal process of criminalizing, but we gave you really clarified standards how to judge what is hate speech or not. And they said it does. I think Prime Minister mentioned this. It doesn't need to be clear, like as a rebuttal, but we should clarify what is hate speech or not if we want to criminalize hate speech in our justice system. But we showed these standards in our member of government side's speech. And also third, they didn't mention anything about the comparison between in-person situation or environment and SNS online situation. But we mentioned there is a difference in the last speech of the member of government. In the in-person situation, there is direct insulting, and in SNS online, there can be some example of celebrities or rumors. So this is especially about the OG. And I want to clarify and manage why we won. Lastly, first, we set and rearrange the definition of freedom. As I said, it can be applied to every people because it is social justice system. And we mentioned all the people, hate speakers or others, or all the stakeholders can be influenced by this. And government websites, yes, they want to equal rights, but yeah, they want to make equal rights everyone. But if there is a hate speech, we cannot win same power or same rights of speech. So then we have to criminalize hate speech to make balance of equal rights. So I can understand government website. So I think this point will be the first point. And also we gave real life examples. I couldn't hear any real life examples. It can be applied relatively, but we explain more well about how our world looks like. For example, like celebrities or politicians, we showed you how remains of hate speech can make bad results in our society. And also we mentioned just criminalizing hate speech is just does not mean just limitation of choice of freedom to all the people, especially hate speaker. Hate speaker is also get instrument of freedom because they can be a victim later, and there can be some possibility of being a victim in our society. So we mentioned this too, so we offset the rebuttals in this point. And there are two more points. How to criminalize? Yes, government should do this to make same way and same rights of speech, and it is not the extreme regulation as the opposition side. For example, like if there is a rumor or a bad influences to celebrities, there can be some like misfacts or fake news, as our member of government mentioned. So we can prevent all the problems in this situation, and we well explained about this. So I think we won these three questions, and especially Dan OG. Thank you. I'll finish my speech.
For your speech, government whip spoke for 7 minutes 23 seconds. Whenever you're ready, let's welcome opposition whip to the podium to finish up our debate.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, I will talk about the deadlock which exists between opposition and the government. That whether standard of hate speech can be objective during criminalizing hate speech, because this kind of things will be in fact that the public will have some pressure for making their opinion spread. And then second, I will talk about why protecting freedom of speech is important, why there are some censorship system in media in status quo. And then lastly, I will emphasize our contributions in this debate. First, I want to talk about the deadlock. For this deadlock, we believe that the standard of the hate speech cannot be objective, and then this if there is law which direct which kind of thing is a hate speech, but this is still be subjective for the normal people, because the way to understand that law is subjective for each people. And we believe that this kind of subjective characteristic will make people more pressure for showing their opinion to others. Because if, for example, if
two peoples are talking about the politicians, and then one people think that some statement that I said to my friends will not be the hate speech, because this is just my opinion, but as I mentioned before, the perspective to seeing the law statement of the law is different for each other. So some other friends who heard that statement can think that that statement is hate speech, and then they can make some or call the police or saying that this is a hate speech. Then this kind of situation will raise the distrust between the people during sharing their opinion, and we believe that this kind of all situation caused by the criminalizing of that law will leading the distrust between the people more. And then also I want to say that the standard of the hate speech is likely to be biased because of the leader of states. As opening opposition mentioned before, that law is made by the council, so the government's opinions can affect the process. So this also have some possibility to make the bias standard, which say that what kind of thing is a hate speech. So we believe that the opening government said this kind of criminalizing will make will prevent politicians to mark some of the group as a bad people, but that kind of circumstance is also can be also exist in their world because of the reason why I mentioned before. And then next I will talk about why protecting freedom of speech is important. The hate speech includes some of the opinion which is related to the politics, and some of the people will make some hate speech about the politicians and criticize some of the policy and just some of the characteristic of that politicians. But we believe that this kind of thing is also needed in our society, because freedom, the purpose of the freedom of speech is to make the democracy society and also give the public to have some right to propose their own opinion and then protest for the government, and then also protecting their right in oneself. So because the public have only way to public didn't have some more power or capital than the government, so their freedom of speech and freedom of sharing their opinion is the most important tool to having some censorship for the government. And we believe that even if there is some extreme case, but it is be more harmful and be more giving some more pressure to the public, that the public who just having some center opinion or less biased opinion, they have more pressure to sharing their opinion about politics, and we believe that this kind of thing is more harmful for our society. And I also mentioned that in status quo there are also some censorship system in the media like SNS,
some of the comments in the YouTube or Instagram will be have been deleted by that enterprise because the enterprise think that this kind of comments will give some bad feelings for the other persons, and we believe that this kind of things can mitigate the harm that the minority having from the hate speech. So we think that our team mitigates the harm suggested by the opposition and having some value of democracy. So this time I will end my speech. Thank you.